Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, I want to go over a topic that I never really thought about doing until now. And recently I made a video about every single car that I have owned since I was 16 years old. And from that video, I figured, why not go over how much money I've spent on cars over the last 17 or so years? And more importantly, how much money have I lost buying, selling, and trading all the vehicles that I have had over that time frame? So I'm going to start off with the very first vehicle that I ever bought, all the way up to what is currently in my garage and in my driveway there. Starting off with vehicle number one was my 2007 Toyota Tacoma with the XSP package. Now I bought this vehicle brand new for right around $33,000. After 8 years and 88,000 miles on my dream pickup truck, it was time to go. I ended up trading it in, and the value that the dealership gave me was $18,500. So a loss of $14,500. Not really all that bad. Toyotas have a very high resale value, even in today's market. At the time, that was roughly 60% of what it cost brand new, so it really wasn't all that bad 8 years later to have that much value still left into it. That was a very fun truck. Now, I could have probably made a little bit more selling it privately versus trading it in. A lot of the modifications that I had on the truck really aren't valued by a dealership, especially when you trade it in. Private sale, I probably could have got a little bit more for the right buyer who wants those parts already done in on the vehicle. And there's also pros and cons between trading and a private sale. There's some tax differences between both of them, just depending on what works best for you in that situation. But I probably could have sold it for a little bit more had I done it privately. But I was kind of in a rush. I really needed to get rid of that vehicle. So $14,500 for 8 years for a pickup truck, not really all that bad. But I ended up trading that in for a 2011 Hyundai Genesis Coupe. I paid $19,000 for this used vehicle. After 1 year and 10,000 miles, I ended up trading that in for about $15,000. So $4,000 to own a reliable vehicle for the time I had it and what I needed it for. Again, not all that bad, still losing money, of course. Now again, I could have sold the Genesis Coupe privately, but I decided to trade it in, and I traded it for a 2010 Lotus Evora. I paid $39,000 for this vehicle. After 1 year and 10,000 miles, I sold it back to the dealer that I bought it from for around $33,000. So I lost about $6,000 on that vehicle over the year. The Lotus really was kind of not the best financial decision, I would say. Even though I lost money on some of these other vehicles, it was the most money that I had lost in a vehicle, especially in 1 year and 10,000 miles. $6,000 is definitely a lot of money. I have a whole separate video I made years ago about the Lotus and why it was a fun car, but it just, as you can see, I lost money on it. It wasn't really the best vehicle. So I ended up selling that back to the dealership. It was kind of impulsive. I should have waited. I could have definitely sold it for more than I paid for it, or maybe waited to trade it in for another vehicle and maybe got a little bit more. I definitely got lowballed on that car. So yeah, Lotus, it happens, right? So the reason that I sold the Lotus is because I wanted to get into another Toyota Tacoma. So I went over to Tacoma number one. Tacoma number two is right there, blue, big blue, right there. So I paid $34,000 for this TRD Offroad, bought it brand spanking new. So that was my second brand new vehicle, both being Tacomas. And if I sold that today, right now, I could probably get anywhere between $35,000 and $40,000 for it. I have a lot of modifications on it. Like I mentioned earlier, if I traded it in, sometimes dealers will not value the modifications like someone selling it privately would. However, there are some dealerships that would absolutely take this truck as is, knowing that they could get top dollar for it because of how much money is put into the truck. Now, if I sold it for $40,000, I'd still probably lose a little bit with the mods that I do have on it. So if I could sell for $45,000, it would almost be breaking even at that point. Realistically though, high 30s, 35 at the lowest, I think. I've had this truck for 5 years, put 46,000 miles on it. So this is vehicle number one in the positive range. I can sell it, I can make money on it, and it would make up for the Lotus and some of the other vehicles that I have lost money on. So the next vehicle on the list is my 2007 Honda CBR600rr, the bike that you see tucked away in the corner. I bought this used, paid $4,800 for it. 7 years later, 33,000 miles on this bike now. If I sold it today, right now, I could honestly sell it for around $5,000. I've looked up comps just to see what this would sell for. I found the exact color, exact year of my bike, a little bit less mileage for $5,000. So honestly, I could probably list it for $5,000, maybe take $4,800 for it, maybe go a little bit higher, maybe $5,500. The market's pretty crazy right now. And so if I were to sell it, I'd be in the positive with vehicle number 2. I don't plan on selling that anytime soon, simply because I really can't replace that. For me, bikes are hard to find with what I want, and just cars are a little bit different. So if I sold that, I would really have to have a good replacement for it without spending a ton of money. Because $5,000 for a bike, I think for me, is a really good budget. I wouldn't really want to go over that because I can have fun with this 15-year-old motorcycle. Still runs and drives very nicely. So let's move on to R8 number 1. I'm currently touching R8 number 2, so we have another duplicate for my car list here. R8 number 1, I bought used, 2010. I paid $71,000 for that. After a year and a half and 10,000 miles, which seems to be a common theme for my short-term vehicles, having 10,000 miles, I sold it for $66,000. So that was a loss of about $5,000, so in the second highest loss, I think. So $5,000 for my first Audi R8, really not all that bad. I could have spent $5,000 and bought a very used Toyota Camry, and I had a lot more fun spending that $5,000 for a for an Audi R8. I was gonna say a Lotus Evora, but yeah, I'm not doing that again. It will only be Lotus number 1. So $5,000 on R8 number 1, not all that bad. I did take some exhaust. I took the exhaust off, some other things I had done to it just to kind of recoup a little bit of that money. I probably could have got a little bit more, but at the time that was a pretty fair offer and a fair market value. I listed it for $70, ended up taking $66 for it. So the next two vehicles were very short term. My 2008 Nissan 350Z, I paid $10,000 for it, and after 2 months sold it back to the dealership for $10,000. This was a wash of a vehicle. The dealership never actually had the title for the Z. So that's why I didn't get to do anything with it. I didn't keep it very long. That was happening on in the background while I was making a little bit of content on that car. So that was a complete break even. Got it, had to get out of it, and pretty much made the dealership give me my money back because they didn't have the title. So very sketchy. It looked like a pretty reputable dealership. I don't want to go down that road again. And I hope none of you have to do that, because I was on my 4th temporary 30-day tag, which technically is illegal. You're only allowed to have 1. So I'm not going to get into that story, but that was a wash. $10,000 in, $10,000 out. Onto my 2018 Jeep Wrangler Sport S. Paid $38,000 for this, used of course. After 7 months, I had a little bit longer than I thought. I put a few thousand miles on it. I ended up selling it for $34,000. Now I did do a private sale technically with this. It was on consignment with a good friend at a dealership, so I was able to save a little bit of money there, which was very nice. So it cost $4,000 to own that for 7 months. Not all that bad. It's kind of what the market was. I had a bunch of mods on it at the time, so I got a little bit more for it. I might have bought it a little bit on the higher end. So $4,000 for the Wrangler, not all that bad. That was also another vehicle that I was on my 3rd temporary 30-day tag, and this was from actually a massive dealership all over my area. They have tons. It's one of the biggest dealerships in my area, and I was on vehicle number 2 with more than 1 temp tag. So I was starting to get a little bit nervous on buying vehicles and not getting everything to me correctly. And I ended up selling that because I had a Corvette C8 on order, and I was selling the Jeep. Or I bought the Jeep while I was waiting for the C8, and I sold the Jeep while I was still waiting for the C8, but it was getting closer to hopefully coming in. I ended up actually putting down $7,500 for my Corvette C8, and luckily I got all that deposit back because the car wasn't coming. I decided to back out and cancel that order, and I got R8 number 2 instead, which to me is a lot more fun. Corvette C8 is a cool car. It's just not for me. So let's move on to R8 number 2. This is a 2012, paid $81,000 for this car, and if I sold it today, so about 2 years later, it has 28,000 miles on it, I could honestly probably list this car for $95,000. Now, a few months ago, it was a 6-figure car. Could have easily probably got 110, 115 for it, maybe when at the height of the crazy car market, things like that. So it's dropped a little bit. but even dropping, I could still make money on this car. I don't have any plans on selling this anytime soon. This is more of an investment for me because it will continue to go. It's a 6-speed manual. Manuals are getting more rare, they're getting more desirable, and if I sold this today, right now, I really can't replace it for anything less than $100,000. I could get very older Ferraris, maybe another R8 that's a little bit older, not as many or a lot more miles than on this car today. So to me personally, it is not worth getting rid of this unless I found some other car that I was able to afford and I could justify getting rid of this. So I could actually make the most money on this car right here out of everything that you've seen today. And so with all that said and done, I have spent a grand total of $329,800 on vehicles over the last 17 years. So brand new and used, that is the grand total. I have also lost $33,500. So when you add up everything with the purchase price and the selling price or the trade-in price, it adds up to just over $33,000. Now, that does not include my motorcycle, which was one of the 3 that I could make money on. It doesn't include my Toyota Tacoma, which was number 2 of the 3, or the R8 in my garage right now, which I could make money on and actually make more than the $33,500 that I have lost. So right now I have a garage full of essentially money that is to be made if I got rid of these vehicles. And then of course it doesn't include all of the revenue from the content generated. For our channel, of course, we do a lot of DIY projects. Our vehicles are our business. So by creating content, we can actually make revenue on these vehicles, which again helps. It's a little bit separate, of course, from the purchase and the selling price, but it's some money that we can recoup, which is of course nice. So there you have it with all the vehicles that I've owned over the last 17 years. $329 some thousand on vehicles is crazy. When I added that up, I did not realize that it was that much. But we have a business to run and cars are our passion. So we love to buy cars, do it very smart, and with the money that I have lost, I can easily sell that and get that money back. So it's a buying game. You know, you have to buy smart, you have to sell smart, and you have to buy the right vehicles as well. Little did I know that my motorcycle here would kind of break even 7 years later. I knew the R8 would do well, and the Tacoma, people are huge Tacoma fans. There's a lot of following for the Tacoma. Personally, there's a huge following for the Tacoma, and being a Toyota, it has that high resale value. So if you want to make some money, you want to have some nice vehicles, you don't want to lose a lot of money either, you have to buy the right vehicle. It might be a little bit more expensive for you, but in the end, you'll pretty much get all that money back, if not a little bit more, if you are interested in selling that vehicle in the short term. But that is going to wrap it up for today's video. I'm not going to touch anything on the finances to be able to afford all these vehicles. We have a lot of those videos that you can check out down in the description. Today, I just wanted to cover those basic numbers for all these vehicles. So if you're interested in how you can afford vehicles like this, check out those separate videos. If you enjoyed today's video, give it a huge thumbs up, smash that subscribe button, and I will see you all in the next video.